Welcome back everyone. As most of you know, the iPhone 7 Plus is one of those iPhones Apple released many years ago, and I've actually been talking about this phone for several years, and this was one of the iPhones that I actually used at one time. And throughout this year, I made a beginning of this year review, middle of this year review, and the late review that we're doing now, and there have been so many things that have changed within this device, and we have to particularly focus on this device. So a few things that changed, two massive ones. First of all, Apple released the new iPhones, which didn't really impact this iPhone too much. It did kind of wobble this phone in the price tag in the used market a little bit, which is good. But that's the first thing. The second thing is iOS 15. This thing impacted this iPhone like crazy. And I'm going to tell you, I've already made several videos of iOS 15 just on this phone. And I've installed every single beta. I've installed every single official version. And I definitely do think the iPhone 7 Plus is probably going to get iOS 16 as well. So I think that's a good thing. I don't really see that being a bad thing in any way, hopefully. So even if iOS 15 is kind of weird here and there, I think iOS 16 will go ahead and fix it for sure. But again, with the iPhone 7 Plus, this is one of those devices where you can go ahead and still kind of feel like you have somewhat of a relevant device. Now, it's definitely not perfect. It has some issues for sure. The body seems kind of outdated. The panel really isn't that bad, and you do actually get a dual camera setup, which is pretty much the same type of setup that we have on the iPhone 13s. Obviously, the 13s have better cameras, and they're much better just in every single way. But the philosophy is still there, if you guys know what I mean. You have the Lightning port, Touch ID. It's just the bezel that really throws us off. The size I think is really good, but I just wish, this was 2016, so we can't really blame Apple too much, and they didn't really change the bezel until next year after. But I'm a fan of this phone. I think the body still feels pretty good, and that jet black model of the iPhone 7 Plus was beautiful. I was a humongous fan of that one, and I definitely do think if you're planning on picking up a phone like this, you're definitely going to be happy for sure, and at least in terms of the body, for the price tag that you're paying and for how old this phone is, it being 5 years now. Now, software, like I mentioned, this was pretty much a gigantic ride for iOS 15. It was, a little bit weird when, it first came out. It wasn't, stable. I think the good thing about this iPhone 7 Plus is that I didn't have to reboot it. I didn't have to factory reset it. Nothing crazy like that. Obviously, I had to reboot it and restart it every once in a while, but there weren't really too many crazy issues with iOS 15. Although, for a stability standpoint, I would still not recommend you to install iOS 15 on your iPhone 7 Plus. I feel like that would cause way more issues than it's worth, and I would recommend staying away from actually installing it on your main device if you're currently using an iPhone 7 Plus. But on the other hand, it still doesn't mean that this phone is a bad performing phone, or if it's, an unstable phone. I think this phone is actually very stable for the most part, at least when it comes down to just the performance aspect, because I've compared this iPhone against all the iPhone 13s, and it actually did a pretty decent job. I was not expecting this iPhone to do as good of a job as it did, and I think that's just a testament of what Apple was able to do with the 7 Plus at that time, and the fact that this device still holds up extremely well is one of those things that I'm really happy about. Now, the camera is also one of those things, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't really just, depend on this camera too much, but I feel like with the camera, it's almost the same thing as the performance. Because of the age of this phone and how cheap this phone has gotten, it's kind of made it seem like it's a better performing camera, or it's a better performing phone because of the age, because of all those things considered. So definitely, if this was $1,000 phone, it wouldn't be that good, but it's still supported. But it still takes photos, you still have portrait mode, and I think that's a pretty good thing for this phone as well. So those are some of the main things that pretty much changed with this device right now. Like I mentioned, if I were you, I would definitely not recommend picking up something like an iPhone 7 Plus as of this point. There are so many better devices as you can pick up that are definitely worth the money upgrading to. I definitely do think going from an iPhone 7 Plus to an iPhone, 10, for example, is a solid upgrade for sure, and that phone is definitely going to be supported for many more years as well. And I definitely do think that is probably one of those devices that you could pick up and pretty much be okay with. So if I were you, I would probably recommend, keeping your iPhone 7 Plus if you want it. I would not recommend buying this phone right now. I would recommend, buying an iPhone 10 if you don't have an iPhone right now, or if you're planning on getting a 7 Plus. I'd recommend saving some money going to an iPhone 10. But also, I would recommend you to, if you have a 7 Plus, feel free to keep it. I think it's actually a pretty decent phone still if you have it currently, but I just wouldn't recommend installing installing iOS 15 on it just yet. I would recommend waiting until the next version of iOS, like 15.2 or something, and then installing it then. But I think iOS 14 is probably the one I would recommend you to stay on for at least a little bit of time now. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.